This time we're going level 4 with React Native. So hello Web Zurich, thank you so much for having me today, and welcome to Can It Be Done in React Native. Can It Be Done in React Native is a YouTube series that emerged from the fact that after starting React Native development, I would look at the apps on my phone very differently. For every delightful user experience, I would be wondering, how can we do it in React Native? So it's nothing of the scale of what you're doing on YouTube, Martin, but we're having a lot of fun doing it. So in every episode, we look at an iconic user experience from an app that people know and love. We discuss how we would implement it in React Native, why the example is interesting to look at, and finally, we do the actual implementation. So today, I would like to do two things. First, discuss the rule of the game, what makes an experience doable or not doable in React Native. And I think it's very interesting, even if you're not a React Native developer, because it really shows the heart of the matter when it comes to React Native development. And then finally, I would like to show you some examples and common recipes that emerged while doing the show. And we start with the rule of the game. So when it comes to React Native development, the rule of the game is to have your experience running at 60 FPS even on low-grade Android devices using declarative gestures and animations. So what do I mean by that? So this is a very simplified version of schema of how the React Native architecture works. So you have the UI thread, the JavaScript thread, and they talk to each other through JSON messages, which are sent and received asynchronously. So if you do your gestures and animation imperatively in the JavaScript, you're going to send some messages to the UI thread. Again, these messages need to be serialized, deserialized. They're sent asynchronously. So you're sure to drop a frame. You have 16 milliseconds per frame. So if you do your gestures and animation imperatively, you are certain that your user experience is going to be clunky and you're going to have some frame drops. So the key to success is to avoid frame drops. And so the way we avoid this is by declaring every gestures and animations beforehand, and finally simply having the native thread, the UI thread, dealing with the gestures and animations without talking to JavaScript. And then you're certain to get a really good user experience, 60 FPS, even on low-grade Android devices. Let me show you two examples from two apps made with love in beautiful Zurich. So the first one is any sticker app built by Johnny Berger. Johnny is here in the audience. Hi, Johnny. And, oh, this is not running, excuse me, sorry. Okay. Oops, sorry. So Johnny is an amazing React Native developer. He knows all these principles. And so when, in this video, what you're seeing here, there is no JavaScript code executed. All the gestures, so from the granting the gesture, ending the state changes in the gesture to all the animations you're seeing here, everything has been declared beforehand. And so this is likely to run extremely well even on a low-grade Android device. Same example here from the LearnG app. So it's a language learning app through emojis. We use the same principle here to declare all gestures and animation beforehand. The novelty here is that also the text values are updated on the native threads without talking to JavaScript. So animation values are not only numerical values that you use to, for opacity, translations, and so on. You can also use strings. And so this kind of technique to update text values without crossing the React Native bridge is kind of novel. So again, this is the key to success, the heart of the matter, 60 FPS even on low-grade Android devices using gestures and animations. So now I would like to show you a couple of examples and common patterns that emerged while doing the show. So one we call hidden Choreo. So by using, gestures and animation in React Native have a fairly high barrier to entry because they are low-level APIs. But sometimes you can use a high-level construct to do what you want. So here we hide, so you have a transparent square view overlaid on top of the cards, and we use it to drive the gesture and animation. So we have a card component, we give it the Y value, and we know how to interpolate the Y value for the cards to be swipeable like this. Here's an example from the Flutter gallery. So they have an app with a couple of examples. And if you look at these things moving, there's a lot of things going on. How would you do this in React Native? It seems a bit overwhelming, right? You have a lot. But you can decouple it in a really easy way. So by having two hidden scroll views on top of each other, one to drive the Y animation value, one the X animation value, and then we're going to pass this animation value to interpolate everything else. So the translations, yeah, all the animations. So we've really broke down the problem into two digestible parts. The gesture, and finally, once we have the proper animation values, we just need to interpolate everything to get to the desired result. So another really important recipe is React Native Gesture Handler and Reanimated, which are the two libraries you absolutely need to use when dealing with gestures and animation in React Native. Without these libraries, the spectrum of what is doable in React Native would be quite small, and my videos would be quite boring. So the library has a fairly high barrier to entry because it's a very low level of abstraction, but it's very rewarding. So if you spend time to learn it, you can build extremely delightful user experiences. And again, in these videos, there's no JavaScript code running. Everything has been declared beforehand in JavaScript. This is another example that we built recently. So we cloned the shared transition effect from the App Store app of the day on iOS. And speaking of libraries which extend the spectrum of what can be done in React Native, I would like to say a few words about React Native animation, SVG animations. So the SVG library in React Native also works pretty well with declarative animations on the UI thread. So this is an example from Apple bedtime, and we can declare all the trigonometry functions on the UI thread. So again, here we were not executing any JavaScript, we're not crossing the bridge. This is another example we did where we cloned the swipe gesture on the Google Chrome browser on iOS. And so here you have really SVG and gestures and animation working well together. And this is, so this is web Zurich, not app Zurich. But this is done using web development skills, right? We're just writing JavaScript, using CSS, using web technologies to build these user experiences. And so this is a really interesting example to look at. So you have, again, lots of things going on. So you have the ellipses that is animated, moves with the finger from one button to the other, but there is also some transition from one button to the other. So how do you break down such a problem? Again, how would you do this? It looks a bit overwhelming. So the way we did it is, first we decided to not care about the transition between the buttons and just animate the ellipses properly from one button to the other. And we decided to do it imperatively first because it's a bit easier and easier to debug, even though it's slower. So first we wrote down case by case. Okay, if the button is left, we do this. These are the animation values. If the button is in the middle, these are the animation values. If it's on the right, these are the animation values. If this works, you can factorize it to something a bit more general. Okay, so for any position, this needs to be the animation values. And if this works, so you have this imperative code, we're going to use a declaration instead. So what you see here is the exact same code snippet, but instead of writing it imperatively in JavaScript, we've done a declaration to the UI thread. And now we see that we have basically two animation values that drives animation, index and center. They are treated as discrete values, so we set +1, -1. And so if we decide to treat these discrete values as continuous values, we'll probably get the nice transition for free. And so here the same code snippet, but we treat the animation values as being continuous, not discrete, and that will give us exactly what you're seeing on the video. So last but not least, let's talk about 3D animations. So we've done also a couple of 3D animations in the series. And these animations are pixel perfect on iOS. They're a bit more tricky to get right on Android because they often need us to control the perspective of the scene. And right now on Android, with React Native, it's not really possible to do this. So this is an example from the Instagram cube rotation. So here, as you can see, the transformation we need to apply depends on the value of the perspective. So it's going to be pixel perfect on iOS, but on Android, we're going to need to play some tricks. This is another example from the Clear app, where we have two views overlaid on top of each other. One rotates from 0 to 80 degrees, one from 0 to -80 degrees, so to give this impression that the text is folding. We have also translate Z transformation, which depends on the scale, which depends on the perspective value. So again, on Android, it's going to be a bit not so perfect. So some people have suggested that my goal with this series is to prove that anything can be done in React Native. But actually, I find it much more interesting to spend time on what cannot really be done in React Native. And these 3D transformations are definitely on the edge of what is doable. So these are the two topics I'm really focused on at the moment. So providing 60 FPS user experiences in React Native, even on low-grade Android devices, as well as building delightful user experiences that can make all the difference. So if you are working on these topics as well, probably we should talk. If you are doing anything cool with React Native, we should definitely talk. So yeah, that was Can It Be Done in React Native? Thank you for your time.